An autistic woman has to live like a normal human being. She tries to socialize with her environment. Despite getting a lot of discrimination, but she did not give up. Even she created a new invention in science. This film tells the story of a woman named Temple Grandin. When she was 4 years old, her mother realized Temple's behavior was unlike any other child. She has tantrums easily. She didn't want to be touched and talked. When she went to the doctor, the girl got a diagnosis that she had autism. Based on the doctor's recommendation, Temple had to stay at a foundation to reduce her symptoms. But the mother chose to try on her own by stimulating Temple, even though it was a challenge for her. When Temple grew up, in high school, she often beat students who bullied her until she was expelled from school. Because of that, her mother took Temple to another school. The school has a different approach to learning. There, Temple became acquainted with all the teachers, including Dr. Carlock, a scientist who had worked at NASA. Before entering the school, Eustacia, Temple's mother, tried to explain why Temple was different and why she was expelled from school. Since the teachers' responses there were not as expected and the students outside mocked Temple's strangeness, Eustacia then changed her mind. She decided to take Temple home. But Dr. Carlock comforted Eustacia by saying that Temple was extraordinary. Dr. Carlock said maybe this school would be the right place for Temple. Eustacia felt guilty for sending Temple into the boarding school. She felt like throwing Temple away. But Dr. Carlock said that it was important, as Temple's first step in seeing the outside world, because Eustacia would not always be able to protect Temple from the ridicule of others. Temple also had to learn to face the harsh life. Different doesn't mean incapable, said Dr. Carlock. Eventually, Temple was left there. At that school, Temple was interested in animals, especially horses. At that time, Temple was even interested in a horse named Chestnut who was famous for being temperamental. Feeling just like herself, Temple dared to approach the horse and managed to calm it down. She then studied with children in general, but instead she was mocked for not being able to learn language and algebra. On the contrary, she is very good at practical lessons. One day, she becomes the target of bullying. She punched a boy.
Really excellent work.
Oh, what happened here? She hit him for no reason.
Because of the incident, Temple was sentenced to 2 weeks. She can't ride a horse. One day, Temple visited Chestnut and she was confused because her favorite horse was already dead. She was confused where the horse would go after death. Dr. Carlock tried to comfort her. And from a brief chat with Temple, Dr. Carlock realized one thing, that Temple's visualization ability was above average. So, he told the other teachers about it. Dr. Carlock points out that Temple is a visually oriented learner, because she is very good at studying objects such as in biology or crafts lessons. Bottom line, Temple is good at lessons that involve real objects. That's why, subjects like French as well as algebra were bullshit to her. Listen to Dr. Carlock, the other teachers weren't enthusiastic. Dr. Carlock said Temple was an outstanding visual thinker. When in his class, Dr. Carlock performs an optical illusion. Seeing the video, Temple showed her interest. Dr. Carlock gave them all the task to explain about the video. And for Temple, Dr. Carlock gave a special task, that is to create optical illusions. Temple's brain went straight to work. This task makes her an active thinker even though she gets unpleasant treatment from her friends. She tried to make an experiment but failed. Finally, she gave up and asked Dr. Carlock. A little hint from Dr. Carlock made Temple understand immediately. She managed to make optical illusion crafts like the one in the video. Temple received appreciation from her teachers as well as her friends.
Temple, congratulations. A round of applause.
Dr. Carlock became such an important figure to Temple that she could realize her strengths. Because Dr. Carlock, Temple wants to continue her education to college. Dr. Carlock said that the university was the door that would open a whole new world for Temple. So, in 1966, Temple went to Arizona and was picked up by her aunt, and Anne. Temple's arrival to Arizona was for college. Temple grew up very intelligent and liked to see things in her own image and then relate them to a thought. For example, when she opens and closes the fence of her aunt's house, it can become something in her head. Aunt Anne and Uncle Mike work as ranchers. It was in this house that Temple would stay for a while until she entered college. Being autistic, of course there are some things that can trigger her anger easily. So Uncle Mike and Aunt Anne had to figure out how to deal with Temple. Of course, Aunt Anne had gotten a message from Eustacia about how to handle her child. Aunt Anne was amazed by Temple's intelligence when she explained about horse vision. In fact, Aunt Anne had kept her horses for a long time, but she didn't know about it. Temple was always intrigued by the new things she saw. Even a cow she had just seen. Temple could learn its characteristics quickly. On the farm, Temple was very happy. You could say, her desire to learn is very high. Even with a fence, she can do calculations to increase her knowledge and come up with a way, so that people can open the fence without having to get out of the car. One day, the housekeeper accidentally dropped a sign on Temple's door. So, when she returned to her room and saw the writing on her bedroom door fall, she immediately had a panic attack until she ran out. Aunt Ann, who was chasing after her, was surprised when Temple ran and got into the tongs for the cows. Temple forced Aunt Ann to use the device on her. Temple didn't like being hugged by other people, but with this tool, Temple actually calmed down because it felt like being hugged. One day, Eustacia came to visit. She was amazed to see the automatic fence her daughter made. She was also saddened to hear that Temple used tools for cows to calm herself down. But according to Aunt Ann, it was great because Temple found a way to calm herself when she was angry. Eustacia also wanted to take Temple off to college, as she was going to Franklin Pierce College and living in a dormitory. Temple actually had a bit of trouble getting along with other people. Because of that, her mother accompanied her to the dormitory. Temple's first day on campus begins. When learning French, Temple was told by her teacher to read. But she refused. Forced, Temple finally did. But she did not read the book, but only by looking at the pages of the book. Temple could read from her memory. Temple was a genius, but alas, she was seen as weird. When in the cafeteria, when she saw the automatic doors, all in Temple's mind was like a butcher's tool. She was frightened and became a laughingstock. Because of this, Temple had to build her own machine like the cow tweezer on Aunt Ann's farm, so she could calm herself. At the same time, came her roommate. Seeing Temple so strange, she immediately reported it to the lecturer. Temple was eventually called in by counseling. Temple was interviewed, but the lecturer used figurative language to ask questions about sexual satisfaction. But Temple caught it denotatively, so there is misunderstanding. Temple's tools were discarded, as they were seen as a kind of tool for sexual gratification. Of course Temple was angry. When it was midnight, she tried to get the device back. But she was caught by a security guard and her device was destroyed. Soon, spring break arrived. When at Aunt Ann's house, Temple said that she didn't want to go back to campus, unless she could take her homemade device to the dormitory. Her mother didn't agree, but Aunt Ann said she'd try to talk to the college and explain about the tools Temple made. However, they still do not prohibit it. But Temple said she could make a scientific experiment to get other students to try it. In a short time, she did research about the tool. Research is carried out as a task by collecting a lot of data and support from many theories. Temple was confused as to why she still got an F because of that. She then made a phone call to Dr. Carlock, her former teacher in high school. Based on the advice of Dr. Carlock, Temple then clarified her duties to the lecturer. Temple explained that the majority of people who tried her machine felt calmer, and she should have gotten good grades. The lecturer was shocked when he saw what Temple was doing. She was really serious and extraordinary. But in order to save the machine, Temple had to keep asking her roommates for opinions. Luckily, Temple found a new roommate. She is a blind girl named Alice. She didn't mind having Temple machines there. And Temple was very happy to hear that. Through Alice, Temple had to force herself to be brave, because she had to lead Alice. Temple wanted to be touched by someone else for the first time in her life. It was also the first time that she had someone who listened to her more than judged her. Thus, Alice's presence in Temple's life brought about a change for her mental health. Alice understood the effect of the machine made by Temple, that it gave Temple peace in exchange for the hug she couldn't accept. In 1970, Temple successfully graduated and became the best graduate. At that time, she gave a speech in front of lecturers and students. She clearly told how her struggle was to become an autistic person who from a young age couldn't talk, until she had to create her own machine to replace the hugs from her parents that she couldn't accept. Seeing her daughter like that, Eustacia couldn't even believe that Temple had turned into an independent person. That morning, Temple was an inspiration to her friends.
When I was younger, I closed myself off from people. Because of my machine, kindness and love that happened, I have not walked alone. As in the
Arizona is a farm town. In 1970, when Temple was continuing her master's studies, she decided to research animal behavior on one of Arizona's largest farms. Temple decided to do some research on the ranch owned by a man named Don Michaels. When Don explained, Temple didn't listen because she noticed something was different about the cows on the farm. But because Temple was a woman, her words were not heard. At his farm, Dawn explains the steps from cleaning up the pests in the cow's body to the slaughtering process. But the process Temple had seen on the farm was inhumane. The cows were forced to swim, stabbed, and even abused, so Temple could see they were in a lot of stress. Temple could see that the cows liked to walk in circles and felt safe away from the guards. But still, her speech was mocked. When the cows entered the slaughtering stage, Temple noticed that the cows were very stressed. Seeing the unusual Temple, Dawn Michaels instead told her teacher that Temple should not be on his farm. But Temple didn't give up. She tried to do some research. She had a lot on her mind. She then told it to her supervisor. Initially, Temple was rejected. But when she explained everything that was best for the livestock would be good for the business as well. Finally, her supervisor listened. He then told Temple to ask Dawn Michaels for approval. But when at the farm, she is not allowed to enter, because women are prohibited from entering the farm. Not running out of ideas, Temple then thought quickly to find a way to get in there. She then sold her old car and exchanged it for a truck. Then, she dirtied her truck and disguised herself as a man. Temple could easily enter the farm area. But the problem is not solved. When Temple asked Dawn Michaels for permission, her research application for her thesis was rejected outright. But still, Temple was still doing her research.
Strong and in proper proportion.
She tried to position herself as a farm animal. Many things are recorded and immediately captured quickly as evaluation material. Because Temple was hard to tell, Dawn Michaels and the cowboys who were there bullied Temple by littering her truck with cow innards. But Temple put up a fight and didn't want to be intimidated. What Temple did made one of the cowboys named John decide to help Temple. He signed Temple's research application and advised Temple to go elsewhere if he wanted to observe cow behavior, such as a Robello field or auction site. One day, at the auction, Temple saw a reporter for the ranch newspaper. There, she decided to pursue one of them and offered her thesis on livestock control systems. Temple wanted her thesis published in the newspapers too. Temple was asked to submit her writing. If it was interesting, it would be published in the newspaper. Shortly after, Temple went back to her supervisor and gave her a signed request. Temple also said to read the introduction to her thesis that had been published in the paper. That was Temple's journey until she got her master's degree in 1975. Her mother then threw a Thanksgiving party for Temple. The people there tried to make small talk with her, but since they didn't understand what Temple was saying about farm animals, they made unpleasant gestures. That was what made Temple sad, because people always exchanged glances when they spoke to her. Fortunately, there was her mother who always explained to Temple that she was proud because Temple was the only master of science and animal science in the room. Becoming a master made her want to research and write more. So she went back to Dawn Michaels' ranch. But her arrival was even banned because she was not a student anymore. Temple didn't run out of ideas. She went to the office of a newspaper called Arizona Farmer. She goes to Jeff, the reporter who's helping her, and says she's going to write a lot for Arizona Farmer as long as she can get a reporter ID so she can get into the ranch area. Jeff granted her request. Temple easily entered without being intercepted again. Temple Grandin succeeded in spawning writings on how to handle livestock, which were successfully published in print media, until her name became famous. While working at the Arizona Farmer, Temple accidentally met a ranch owner named Ted Gilbert who often read Temple's writings and thought they all made sense. He then offered to Temple to make a design on his farm. Of course, Temple took this opportunity. First, she had to describe her designs to show Ted. Once approved, the track is created. When finished, they planned to make a presentation. But before that, Ted wanted Temple to demonstrate it to a reporter. The track that Temple made was very comfortable for the cows. They move without being hit and get into the soaking pool without stress. All aspects were considered by Temple in its design for the comfort of the farm animals. The newspaper reporter was amazed and said that Temple's design was a masterpiece. The next day, Temple was getting ready to give a presentation of her work. But unfortunately, some of the people at Ted's farm even dismantled the track because they thought it would take a long time to get the cows into the pond. When Temple came, she was shocked by the behavior of the cowboys. They instead blamed Temple because a cow died, even though it was their own doing that ruined Temple's design and didn't use it according to the rules. Temple left the farm. She then drove to California to see Dr. Carlock and let out all her annoyance. Temple just wanted the cows to be less stressed when slaughtered. They exist for humans, at least humans should show respect. If the animal is in pain and fear, then the cortisol level will be high, so the quality of the meat will also decrease. Dr. Carlock told Temple that maybe she should also design a good abattoir for livestock. So one day, Temple came upon the largest cattle slaughterhouse in Arizona. But due to tension, She was instead kicked out by the security guard before meeting with the management. When she returned home, Temple got a call from her mother that Dr. Carlock died. After all, it was only last night that Temple met him. Losing Dr. Carlock doesn't affect Temple. For her, Dr. Carlock will live on in her memory. Temple left immediately before the funeral was over. Before leaving, Temple gave her body to hug. Her mother was immediately moved, because after decades, it was the first time. One afternoon, when she wanted to buy jelly at the shop, Temple was still afraid if she had to go through the automatic door. Fortunately, there is a woman named Betty who understands Temple's plight as autistic. She helped Temple to get out of the shop. Unexpectedly, Betty's husband worked at the cattle slaughterhouse that kicked Temple out yesterday. Temple was immediately excited that she had a plan for a more humane and efficient slaughter of cattle. Because of Betty, Temple's way to meet the company's top brass was wide open. On one occasion, Temple had time to explain the design. But these gentlemen say that to make it is very expensive and Temple is considered inexperienced in designing such designs. Temple immediately explained the purpose of the design, how much money was spent to pay guards who stabbed livestock, how long it would take if there was a buildup due to a cow rampage, how many cows were injured. Because of that, Temple guarantees with her system, all these things will never happen. There was only a quiet line of cattle. Temple explains that her autism is an advantage that can carry out her plans in the mind, observing every step and process. While the others were just looking at the plan, Temple made sure that this would go smoothly. In short, Temple design is used. In fact, she was the one who inaugurated the first cow to be slaughtered with her system. With the system she created, the cows can be slaughtered in a calm state without stress. At that time, cows were still livestock and shortly after, they instantly died into pieces of meat. That's why we have to respect them. Temple's sense of empathy is astonishing, where she can also feel what the animals feel. In 1981, Eustacia invited Temple to go to the National Autism Convention. There, a lot of parents whose children have autism are present to listen to the opinions of experts. Listening to experts who only had opinions, made Temple want to speak up. She said autistic children who spin or roll around just want to get a sensation of calm that they can't get from a mother's embrace.
I think spinning is good. Self-stimulation does seem to eventually compensate for not being held that ordinary children get from a hug. I'm autistic of being hugged. A BA and a master's, and I'm studying for my doctorate.
From the participants' bench, Temple fully explained how she became autistic. She said that don't be sad if their child has autism, because autistic children can see details that normal children cannot see. She also told how when she became antisocial, she was able to blend in with society, and even became independent. Because of this, Temple was asked to speak on stage.
We want to hear everything.
At first she was nervous, but she imagined it was a new door to something new. Through her life story, Temple Grandin shows that it is not only possible for autistic people to succeed, but they can rise to the top. Temple Grandin inspires teacher therapists and family members that visual learning makes a much better connection for people with autism. Temple didn't want her thoughts to die with her. And she realized she had to make a change. Temple Grandin continued her studies until she became a professor at the State University of Colorado. She teaches about autism and how to handle animals. In America, most of the farms already use the system designed by Temple Grandin. Despite being autistic, Temple Grandin considers it not a handicap, but a gift. We should also consider the shortcomings that exist in ourselves to be part of our lives. So that whatever shortcomings we have, this time will not be an obstacle to moving forward so that we can focus on making our shortcomings into extraordinary potential. As Temple Grandin said, being different doesn't mean incompetent.